So, for this last day of Down Syndrome Awareness Month, I thought I would share Luke's birth story. He's 3 months old, and I'm just now kind of coming to a place where I think I'm ready to talk about it. But I want to have it on video so that the little moments don't get missed, and I have something to remember everything by, because already things are starting to get fuzzy. But to start at the very, very beginning, Jesse and I, around Eli's first birthday, decided we wanted to have another baby. And it took us 11 months, nearly a full year, to conceive. And I found out I was pregnant on Christmas Eve, 2020. And I could not have been more happy. I was so excited to give Eli a sibling and to be pregnant again. And I just was overjoyed. And the pregnancy was smooth as silk. Unlike Eli's pregnancy, I was barely sick at all. I think I only threw up maybe 2 or 3 times. And everything was great. All of my checkups were fine. Everything was going well. And then at our 20-week anatomy scan, I'm just so excited to find out the gender. That's all I could think about.
If this baby number 2 is a boy or a girl, and
what do you think? What do you want? Do you want a boy or a girl for the
well, what I want, what I think, I don't know. Here's the thing. Obviously, first and foremost, we're both just praying and hoping for a healthy baby.
And we get to the ultrasound facility, and she's looking at me, and he's just wiggling around so much and moving. He, throughout my pregnancy, just was such a mover, just always doing flips. And I thought, I was like, oh, he's just a strong guy, which he is such a strong guy. And so she told us the gender, and I was totally shocked. I really thought the entire time, everybody, my whole family thought I was having a girl. Surprise, boy.
Eli is going to have a little brother.
Oh my gosh! You are kidding me!
So this is what I'm looking at here. This is a little boy.
Oh boy, right here. Hey, all right.
She, at the end of the ultrasound, she was like, his femur, his long bones, are measuring a little short. And she was like, and I'm having a hard time reading some things because he's moving around so much. So you're gonna have to go into this specialist and just have her confirm some things and recheck some things, because he's wiggling too much and I can't get an accurate read. So I was like, oh, okay, nothing to really be alarmed about. I was like, okay, whatever. So I think it was like a week later or something like that, I go to a maternal fetal medicine specialist to have a look at Eli, and she confirmed that his long bones were shorter. And it could be a soft marker of Down syndrome, but the way she presented the information to me was very much like, I'm scanning him, everything else, he looks great. She wanted to see him do so many movements in 5 minutes. He did all of these movements within 45 seconds. He was boom, boom, boom. And so she was like, yeah, everything is measuring great. I don't see anything wrong with anything. Everything looks perfectly healthy, but those long bones are still short. So I want you to come back weekly. And I also want you to do some non-stress tests just to make sure that, everything is looking okay. So the whole non-stress test thing kind of threw me for a loop, but then I thought, okay, it should be fine. So every time I went in for weekly non-stress tests from there until I gave birth, every time I did a non-stress test, it was perfect. It was great. Everything looked perfect. And then when I would go back in to have her look at me, which was every other week, she was only finding these short long bones. So she was kind of preparing Jesse and I for maybe skeletal dysplasia. She even presented dwarfism was a stronger possibility than Down syndrome. So at the end of the day, I remember it was 4th of July weekend, and she did her last scan, and she was like, you know what? Everything is measuring right on target except for these long bones. Your husband's side of the family is shorter stature. There's a really good chance that this little guy is just going to be like a shorter guy, but everything else looks perfect. So I wouldn't worry about it. Go home, celebrate. You've got a healthy baby boy. And we were like, great. Everything was peachy keen, and we didn't have anything, we weren't worrying about anything. So cut to a few weeks later, this was mid-July, and at one morning I woke up and I felt something, and I went to the bathroom and I looked, and I believed right now it was my mucus plug, but it was clear and jelly-like, and I got nervous and I thought, oh geez. And then I had like a tinge of blood afterwards. I've never bled in any of my pregnancies. So I was nervous, and I told Jesse, I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to labor and delivery and have them check me just in case. Like, I delivered early with my first son, and I knew that was a possibility to deliver early again. And I wanted to like really prevent that. So I went into labor delivery. She checked me. I wasn't dilated. They, tried to scan to see if I was leaking amniotic fluid. And here's what's interesting. They did like 2 different tests. One test came back negative. One test came back positive. However, the OB at the time was like, sometimes these tests can give false positives. You're completely closed and no more fluid is leaking. So like, go home. I really think you're fine. That should have been a red flag. But anyway, I was like, okay, great. So I went home. A week or so passed. My parents were on vacation. And I remember throughout the pregnancy just saying like, oh, worst case scenario, my parents are gone. I don't have anybody to watch Eli, and my water breaks at 2 a.m. Well, lo and behold, it was a Saturday night. So technically early Sunday morning. I was scheduled to sing at church that Sunday. And at 2:30 in the morning, I was sound asleep, and I was laying on my right side. And I just remember like opening my eyes and being like, oh, something's happening. And I reached down, and I just could feel like warmth. And I was like, my water broke. And I immediately, like, I'm laying down, I kind of smack Jesse, and I tried to get out of bed as soon as I can, because this was like gushing out of me. It wasn't just like a little trickle like with Eli's pregnancy. This was like full like waterworks. So I was like, Jesse, my water broke. And he was in a dead sleep and just like, he said, are you serious? Are you serious? And I ran to the bathroom and just kind of like let it trickle in the toilet. And luckily, I did have my hospital bag packed. At this point, I was 33 weeks and 5 days pregnant when my water broke. So I told Jesse it was 2:30 in the morning. My sweet sister, who I had kind of been like, hey, just in case, mom and dad aren't here to watch Eli, if there's an emergency, like, could you be on call? Lo and behold, 3:00 in the morning, she got a phone call saying my water had broken, and if she could make the 3-hour drive up here so she could watch Eli, so Jesse could be with me. And I looked at Jesse and I said, look, you got to stay here with Eli. He's sleeping. You stay here. Everything's going to be fine. I'm going to drive myself to the hospital. So I like stuck some towels in between my legs, grabbed my bag really quick, and got in the car and drove myself to the hospital at 3:00 in the morning. And the worst, I parked in the wrong parking lot, and I waddled down and the doors were locked, and then I had to park in the other parking lot and waddle down to the emergency room and then go to labor and delivery. And I get there and they confirm that my water had broken. And backtracking, when I went in to labor and delivery, when my mucus plug came out, they did an ultrasound to see where the baby was, and he was head down in position, ready to go. So this was, looking back, it was 2 days later. I had been in my mucus plug came out 2 days before. I think I said it was weeks. It was 2 days, because I remember then when I went into the hospital, for reals, she said, okay, well, we need to do an ultrasound to see where the baby's at. And I said, oh, well, I just had an ultrasound done 48 hours ago. He was head down. And she's like, okay, well, we'll just do another one to make sure. The ultrasound person came in, put the jelly on, and she goes, oh. And she felt right over here, and she said, right here, there's his head. He's breech. And my heart just like sunk, and I was just like, oh, and I knew exactly what that meant. I knew what was about to happen. So they gave me a steroid shot to help his lungs develop, and they admitted me, and the doctor said, okay, so like the goal is for you to make it to 34 weeks exactly, and then we're going to deliver him by C-section. I asked her why 34 weeks. She said, just because my water had broken, there's a chance of infection, and my water will continue to leak out of me until he's delivered. I'm going to continue to leak. So 34 weeks, which also meant, in addition to the cesarean, automatic NICU stay, like I wasn't going to get skin to skin, all of these like hopes and dreams gone. So they admitted me, gave me the steroid shot, and then this was at 3 o'clock in the morning. So then I'd say about 6 or 7 o'clock, so maybe 4 hours later, I'm laying in the bed and Luke's heart rate tanks. All of a sudden, like 4 nurses run into the room, and they were like, move to your side, move to your side. And I moved to the other side, and I sit there and they can't find anything. And then they're like, get on all fours. So I'm on all fours on the bed, and my butt's hanging up in the air, and they're like trying to measure things. And then all of a sudden, like his heart rate came back. But the nurse, my main nurse, was like, okay, you need to call your husband, tell him to get here right now, because there's a good chance that in the next hour you're going to have this baby. And I just was like, oh God, I hadn't had the second steroid shot that he needed, all of these things. And 34 weeks really is like a marker you want to try to get to. Anything before 34 weeks, there could be like long-term issues and whatnot. So I called Jesse. My sister's on her way, but she hadn't gotten there yet. So one of his work colleagues runs to the house to watch Eli so he can run to the hospital to be with me. He gets to the hospital, the doctor examines me, and at this point, Luke's heart rate had stabilized. So she was like, okay, we're going to keep monitoring him. If it tanks again, we're going in. But like, so far he's good, so we're going to just keep you stable. So what ended up happening is, if I had to lay on my left side, and if I moved at all, if I got up to go to the bathroom, if I moved to my right side, if I laid on my back, his heart rate would tank. So for the next 2 days, I wasn't allowed to go to the bathroom. I had to have a bedpan, and I had to lay on my left side. I couldn't move, because the second I moved, it was all over. So I stayed like that for 2 days. My sister came up to watch Eli. Jesse stayed with me that first night because we didn't know if there was going to be an emergency situation again. After that, he went home to check on Eli. My parents, I called them. I didn't want to tell them what was happening because they were on vacation. But then I was in the hospital. It was getting kind of serious, and I wanted prayers and support. And so I called them and told them, and they were like, okay, you got this. It's okay. They hung up the phone and immediately canceled the rest of their trip and got on a plane to come be with me and Eli and Jesse. So it was amazing of them. And so then we made it to 34 weeks exactly. I got my second steroid shot to help his lungs develop. And I remember the doctor came in and she was like, you had me scared. I was sharpening my tools. We were ready to cut you open, but he hung on and you hung on and we were going to do this. So she took the ultrasound machine and double checked for me because I thought, oh, he'd moved so much. Maybe he moved after the water broke. That didn't happen. He was still breech. Took me in to do the C-section. I'd never had surgery before in my life, and did the C-section. Everything went beautifully. I had a spinal. Jesse was right by my side, and I remember I just told him, tell me jokes, and he would just sit there and like tell me stupid dad jokes the whole time, and that got my mind off of it. And so they said, baby's out, and she held him in this little cutout that was in the screen and she held him up, and the first thing I said was, oh, he's so little. He was so small. He was 4 pounds, 5.8 ounces. And I remember just kind of looking at him, and he didn't seem like mine. I don't know how else to say it. But she held him up and his eyes were really puffy. And I just remember thinking, oh, like he's puffy because he was breech and he was inside of me. And she gave him, they whisked him away. The neonatologist NICU team was in the operating room, and they took him. And I remember hearing like the littlest, tiniest, like, ah, ah, ah. It sounded like a little lamb or something, the littlest cry. And when he cried, I knew he was going to be okay. And Jesse went over and they kind of, cleaned him up, and she's stitching me up and everything. And they brought him by me one last time and kind of said, okay, here he is. We're going to take him upstairs. And I told Jesse, I was like, you go be with him. So Jesse went upstairs to be with him. She stitched me up and they finished the surgery. Everything went beautifully. Then they wheeled me into like the recovery little room. Jesse had come back down, and I remember just being like, how's he doing? Is he okay? And he was like, oh, he's doing great. Like they said, everything is fine. Like he's doing really good. He's so cute. And he showed me some pictures he had taken. He was all hooked up to wires and stuff, but he was, for everything considered, he was doing really great. The nurse had hooked me up to some pumps right away, and she was like, okay. I mean, this was 5 minutes after I had gotten out of surgery. She hooked me up to pumps and was like, okay, we got to get you pumping because he's going to be in the NICU and he's going to need your milk and that colostrum. So I'm hooked up to pumps, and the neonatologist came down. Jesse's sitting to my left in a chair, and she comes into the room and she pulls up a chair and she says, I don't like to say this in the operating room. And when she said that, immediately I thought, oh no, something's not right. And she didn't sugarcoat it. She just said, we suspect your son has Down syndrome. And I just remember Jesse was silent and I couldn't look at him. And the first thing I said was, well, are you sure? How likely is this? How are you sure? And she said, I'm 99% sure. And honestly, after that moment, the rest is kind of a blur. But I remember asking a bunch of questions, and she was explaining to me the different types of Down syndrome, how she suspects he has trisomy 21, how he was displaying some of the classic features with the sandal gap in the toes and the low tone and his almond eyes. And so she told us the news, and just kind of the whole time I'm hooked up to these stinking pumps. My nurse was the sweetest person, and halfway through she kind of just took them away from me and let me just kind of like be. The doctor finished talking to us and left, and I looked over at Jesse, and he just had tears rolling down his face, and he looked at me, and the first thing he said was, he's going to live with us the rest of his life.
And I remember, I think the first thing I said to him was, I'm never going to get to perform again. And then we both thought of Eli and how this was going to impact his life. And Jesse got up, and there was like a curtain, and he walked to the other side of the curtain, and I couldn't see him, but I could just hear him just sob. And he came to the other side of me, and he said, hey, I'm gonna, like, are you okay? And I said, yeah, I'm okay. And I remember I kept telling him, like, we're gonna be okay. This is gonna be okay. We're gonna be okay. And he looked at me and he said, hey, I'm gonna go to the cafeteria and get a cup of coffee and just take a walk. Like, I just need to be by myself for a sec. I just need a minute. And I was like, sure, okay, do what you need to do. So he went outside and had a cup of coffee, and they came back and they wheeled me up to his room in the NICU. And that's the first time that I really got to see him. He was in the little box, incubator thing. And I just remember kind of thinking to myself, well, I'm never going to not see it. I never got that opportunity outside of seeing him through that little screen. I never got an opportunity to not see it. These are just my feelings and my memories. I don't know if they're correct or politically correct, whatever, but that's what I thought at the time. And so I saw him. I saw he was doing fine. He was doing really good. And then they wheeled me to my room, and it's just the only way I remember explaining it, it felt like I was swimming through Jell-O. It was just like, I had to keep going. I had to keep pumping. I had to call my parents and tell them. I had to keep moving and breathing. And I had a C-section scar that was physically painful in addition to like my mental and emotional pain. I had this like horrible, like, I would never wish a C-section on anybody. It was horrible. So anyway, it seems like such a downer story, and I feel bad saying that because I have a beautiful boy who is, Luke means light, and he is a light, and he is strong. He is such a strong guy, and he is a sweet baby. But that experience was life-changing, and it was not the experience I wanted, and it was forever changing for me. I had to mourn that baby that I had envisioned for 9 months, well, 7.5 months in my case. But when you get pregnant, you have all these thoughts for your future, for your children. And in an instant, all of those happy dreams and hopes were gone. But now they're replaced with new hopes and dreams that are also beautiful. It just takes some getting used to. One of the only things that got me through was looking at other families on Instagram and seeing their children with Down syndrome thriving and happy and talking and smiling and running and going to school and thriving. That really helped me. And we're just still going through it one day at a time, sometimes a minute at a time. We've done everything we can. Coming home, leaving the hospital and coming home for 5 weeks while he was in the NICU is it was like another way of life. And I, every single day, had to go to the hospital, sometimes twice a day. And I was pumping around the clock. And to have this, like, instead of a connection with your baby, it was a connection with a machine. That was just next level. And we had to buy a freezer to keep all my milk for him. And life was just not what we had thought of. And funnily enough, the first guttural response, I kept telling Jesse, like, I feel like I need another baby. It's almost like my body was like, I need a do-over. I need a do-over. Just, this isn't real. This isn't real. Like, let's try again. Let's try again. Whereas, like, in reality, to think of having another baby right now is insanity. And I do not want one right now. But, like, that's, like, my initial, like, feeling that I felt. And I wasn't super connected to him at the beginning. And obviously now it's like I love that little boy, and he's the sweetest guy. And we're working through it. But that was the story of Luke's birth. And he was on oxygen for less than 48 hours. He was under the lights for jaundice for less than 48 hours. And he had just been like thriving in the NICU. He had done so well. And he was just working on feeding. He had a feeding tube, and he was given my breast milk through the feeding tube and just waiting for those muscles in his mouth to get strong enough to drink through a bottle, which took some time. And we were really blessed to have family give us food and gift cards for restaurants and DoorDash and all of the things, to have our friends and family reach out. And the littlest thing, like reaching out to me on social media and saying that you're thinking of me, meant the world. Meant the absolute world. So thank you to all my friends and family, and for watching this video. And I'm glad that I finally have it kind of documented how it went. So if you ever have any questions, please reach out and let me know. I'm happy to answer them. And here's the star of the show, the little Lukester. Oh, did I wake you up from your nap? I'm sorry. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So he's just the best guy. And it's almost time for your bottle. So we're gonna go. Okay. Bye.